So I think if I was going to summarize my whole like psychological approach to training and getting ready for a peak event or a peak performance that you hope to do, obviously plan out and implement good training that's relevant to the outcome that you want to achieve. Make sure that training is challenging, but it's achievable for you. Not that you need to be able to achieve every single goal along the way, but most of the time you should feel like you're building momentum and you're increasing in skill and getting better prepared. Derive a lot of confidence from your training, challenge yourself, and then just lay it out there on race day. And as long as you do that, you won't have any regrets about your performance. Hey there, how's it going? So this is Nate English from EnglishEndurance.com, and I hope you're having a good day. In this video, I wanted to briefly go over some of my thoughts going into the Diablo challenge and how I planned for doing that and approached it in my head and in my mental game going into it. I think this might be a little bit longer than normal, but I wanted to see, if that was helpful to you or like this type of content. And if you like it, great. If you don't like it, just let me know. Or if you want me to go over certain things in the future. But basically, 2 months ago, I went out and I did, just a fun long ride. I went out to Mount Diablo. I kind of wanted to do a hard workout, but I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to feel. But I thought I would be able to do a decent session. So I rolled into Diablo, wanted to do a pretty, just like a hard effort and see how it felt. But I felt pretty good, and I kept rolling with it and rode one of my fastest times in training over the last several years. So like from the gate to the summit, it was like less than 43 minutes by a small margin. And in the history of my career, I've gone up Mount Diablo hard dozens of times, and usually I have a good feel for what kind of times I would expect to see when I'm out training. So that gave me some confidence that with 7 or 8 weeks to go before the challenge, that if I did, some pretty hard workouts and did the right kind of training, that I would have a very good chance at breaking my old record there. So that's what I decided that I wanted to do. And that's a fun goal for me. Like, I really love those types of events that just kind of measure your fitness. So like time trials and hill climbs kind of speak to me in wanting to do my very best effort and have a little bit more control over the outcome. So just like my background coming from running years ago, if you set a PR at a race, it just kind of objectively shows that you're making progress in the ways that you want, as opposed to mass start bike races where you could be the fittest guy, you could be actually a very savvy racer and very smart, but sometimes just bad luck and other teams or other individuals' tactics just kind of prevent you from being able to get the result that you would want. So on that note, it would be pretty ludicrous for me if I didn't have any experience to go into trying to train for and do an event like the Diablo Challenge and pick a very particular time that I wanted to finish, unless I had some sort of objective data to support that type of goal. So if I knew what kind of power it would take for somebody of my weight to go up a climb in a certain amount of time, great. But if I don't have any of that data, I don't know what my peak power is. I'm like a novice rider or a novice runner, and I'm just picked an event 6 months out or a year out, and I have no baseline of personal history training for the event, whether it's the Diablo Challenge or a half marathon. It doesn't make sense in my mind to pick a particular time. So just some if it was me 10 years ago before I started bike racing and I just said I'm going to do the Diablo Challenge and I want to do it in an hour or in 50 minutes or whatever the goal was, that goal would not be, in my mind, very helpful, because maybe I pick an hour, but objectively that's actually a really easy goal for me to achieve, and maybe I ride 57 or 58 minutes, and that's great. In some sense, I could be satisfied that I achieved the goal that I had set out for. But on the other hand, if I knew that achieving that goal was really easy, it devalues it. And if I could objectively have done 56 minutes and I had that as my goal and I was training for that and I was really murdering myself to do the best that I could possibly do, and 56 minutes was what I was capable of, then anything short of that is actually kind of a not a failure, but it's a failure to achieve that particular goal. So when there isn't a lot of very particular data to support a very particular outcome, I think that it's really good to be aware of our own motivations and our own experience of being an athlete, or if it's some other activity that we're doing, to know whether or not it's useful to pick certain specific targets and maybe adjust those as you're progressing towards them, or if it's better early on when you don't have that data to just choose to do everything that you can to work towards the best possible outcome that you can, and to focus not on the end result, but to focus on the process of, learning day to day how to train effectively, how to recover effectively, learning what workouts you need to be doing, and getting a lot of confidence that you're doing good training and you're progressing, towards, whatever it is that's your North Star of, going up Diablo as fast as you can, or running half marathon as fast as you can. Because if you can do well more than what your target time is, then, your target time is kind of useless. If you pick a goal that's ludicrous and it's like way outside the realm of what's possible, that's also not helpful. So unless you know exactly what you're capable of and you target exactly that, anything that's more or less than that becomes increasingly less and less relevant to what you're actually capable of. So in those cases when we don't have like the knowledge base to be able to kind of specifically target a particular outcome, I find it is very useful to just focus on the process, focus on doing everything that you know is going to be relevant to the goal that you're trying to accomplish, and then to try to execute that as best as you can. And along the way, make adjustments that are that are necessary according to the constraints that you have. So, that's one thought that I have. Like in this particular case, I felt comfortable setting a very particular target. If I was, a newer rider and I was just choosing, I'm going to do the Diablo challenge in 2 months' time, I would just train as hard as I could in the direction of being able to do an hour-long climb as fast as I could. And then on race day, I would, use my heart rate or power data from training or any pre-rides that I had done to shoot for a particular outcome of having a certain average power up the climb. Or if I had a chance to pre-ride the climb a couple times and I go pretty hard, maybe I do 57 minutes in training a couple times. Maybe on race day I think I can do 56 or 55 and change. So that's actually kind of useful, but the whole focus would be on the process of getting better in the direction that is relevant at that time. Charlie, you wanna sit? Good boy. So whatever form things take for you, I think it's good to have clear goals. A lot of times I think that choosing to pursue a particular outcome when there's no way that you objectively could, affect that outcome is sometimes not the most relevant. I think it makes more sense in a lot of cases to just focus on the process of getting as well prepared as you can to get the best possible result. And sometimes if it's something like a fitness oriented goal, like running a half marathon or doing the Diablo challenge, as you get closer and closer to the event and your fitness improves and you're testing it in hard workouts, you'll probably be able to increasingly narrow down what you think your target will be. But early on in the process, if you don't have a lot of data and a lot of experience, I would just shoot for have a goal event and a goal outcome of doing your best for that event, but focus on the process of doing the best that you can to prepare for it. And anyway, so I picked an event, I picked a goal that I wanted to do, and then it was a matter of trying to listen to my body and pay attention to the day-to-day processes of training well, recovering well, doing the workouts that I thought were relevant, and trying to move forward in that way. As previously mentioned in other videos that I've made, I had a real challenge because I got hurt about a month out, and so I had a few weeks off where I wasn't able to train normally. And so at that moment in time, it was really challenging for me because it was very unclear whether I would have a week of lousy training or a week off or what the deal was. And if I had fallen and broken my arm, then it's pretty binary. I just can't train and I can't do the challenge. But in the case of something that's a nagging injury and it's you're not sure how it's going to go, it's really challenging because it's do you just call it quits, or do you hope that it's going to get better in a few days? If it is your knee or your back hurting like me, do you keep training, or do you take a few days off and hope that it goes away? Because there's a certain opportunity cost. If you lose some training days, you are going to start to see your fitness decline as you go from 2 to 5 to 10 days of training lost. On the other hand, if you keep training, maybe you encourage that issue to persist, and maybe a month later you still have knee pain, but if you had just taken a week or two off, maybe it had gone away. So that's a real challenge. And again, it comes down to our ability to know the future, which we really don't. So it's you have to kind of assess what we think is likely, and also in each of those scenarios. So when my knee was hurting, do I keep training or not? So one thing that I find useful to do is to think about the worst case scenarios or the likely scenarios in each of those instances. So it's like, okay, if I keep training, probably if it gets worse, I can just start taking time off. If I don't train, then I know for sure I'm going to lose fitness over time, and I may or may not see my knee get better. It might get better quicker, but it might not, because it might just need to take some time, and as long as I'm training easy enough that I'm not making the situation worse, maybe that's the best approach. So in my case, I chose to keep training. Hi Charlie, it's okay, just relax, it's okay. Good boy. So in my case, I decided to keep training and, tone it down quite a bit and hope that I could still get some aerobic conditioning in that was, a little bit lower intensity, and hopefully, in a week or two, I would be able to go back to doing really hard workouts, which is what I needed to be doing a month out from the event. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that, and so, like about 4 weeks out, I had 2 weeks totally off the bike, and at that point, again, it sucked because I didn't know how much fitness I was going to lose. I didn't know if I would be able to regain that fitness in the amount of time that I had to train for the Diablo challenge once I started feeling better, because 4 weeks out, I didn't know if I was going to take a few days off or a few weeks off or a month off. But as I started to feel better, I decided to ease back into training, keep testing myself, doing some progressively harder workouts, and see where I was at, and see if I was able to do the challenge at all, or if I could get back into really high quality workouts, in the last couple weeks before the challenge. So as things unfolded, I kept kind of reassessing what the situation was and kept reassessing what my goals were. So in this particular case, I had, at the outset, had the goal of trying to set a record at the Diablo challenge. And, that's all good and well, but, having a big interruption to my training was really discouraging to me and not fun at the time, because geez, I hate having time off of any kind of exercise, and you feel lousy physically, you can't focus as much mentally when you're working. I feel more jittery because normally I have a couple hours of training most days, and it's just it feels lousy to not be active and exercising. But given how I was feeling getting back on the bike, I had this question of whether or not I was gonna, keep training and try to set a fast time at the challenge, or if I would just train and just have fun doing it and kind of not care about the result. And that was contingent, in my mind, that was contingent on how my first workouts went and how much I felt like I could progress in that last few weeks once I got back on the bike. So it was challenging though, because you can't go into trying to set a fast time or set a course record, set a PR, or do some sort of objectively very challenging performance if you kind of aren't confident about it, or you kind of half-ass it and you go into it thinking maybe kind of sort of I'll try hard and see how it goes. You either have to have some degree of confidence that it's possible and that you're totally committed to having that outcome, or having a lot of doubts and just kind of putting in an effort that's not 100% effort is not going to get you the result that you want. So if I was certain objectively that there was no way that I could set a record on that day or ride at least a fast time, I would have just ridden it for fun and gone hard, but not had any pressure on myself. But since I was doing some good workouts and I felt like I was picking up a lot of the fitness that I had lost in that last month, I decided to acknowledge but set aside the doubts and the doubts that I had about whether or not I would be able to perform on race day, because if I was focusing on those doubts, it wouldn't really help me to embrace the hard training that I was doing those last couple weeks, and it wouldn't help me on race day to go into it with this just kind of vague kind of question mark about oh, I don't know what I can do. So I think that kind of manifests in the way that I approached the event, because basically we went out, I was fine being at the front, not all the time, but a good portion of the time. I was totally fine pushing the pace as hard as I thought I might be capable of doing the whole way up. And if you look at the results, obviously I didn't do as fast, I didn't ride as fast as I wanted to go, and that was disappointing to me quite a bit, so actually. But if I'd gone into it just thinking that there was no chance of me succeeding, then there would be absolutely no chance of me getting the result that I wanted. So I feel like there's kind of this thing where you get a lot of confidence out of your training, and you get a lot of knowledge out of your training that you can like do what you're capable of doing because you actually done it in training. And I've had that experience over the years. You know, years and years of training have led me to be kind of fairly in tune with what I'm capable of. But when it comes down to like actually racing and executing your hard workouts the last few weeks before an event, and then doing the event itself, like you really have to be kind of just like mentally there and totally focused on doing what it is that you want to be doing. And it's not going to be effective if you just kind of like waffle your way out of it, and you're not totally focused on achieving a certain outcome. So that was, you know, definitely one of the key things for me, was that, you know, it didn't particularly work out in this instance because I just needed more physical training and I needed more time that I was healthy, and, you know, a lousy car door, you know, kept me from doing that. But so that, you know, that was disappointing, but I had no choice but to focus on what I wanted to focus on, otherwise the result wouldn't have been there. So I think that kind of brings me to my next point, was that like in my mind, most of my training mentally the last like few weeks and ideally like the last few months, but I was interrupted in my training. But my focus in training was to do workouts that I knew were appropriate and would build up the kind of fitness that I needed and the kind of like skill that I needed to do the types of hard efforts that were relevant to the event that I was going to do. And I wanted to do workouts that would build my confidence because I know that I really enjoy them, or I'm very good at them, and I feel like when I do them, I get a lot of confidence that I like nailed the workout and it feels good to do it. But in addition to that, I also sometimes choose workouts to do that are mentally challenging for me because I'm not sure I'll be able to do them, or that are, you know, outside of my comfort zone insofar as like it's not the exact kind of effort that I feel really skilled at or really talented at doing those types of physical efforts. So, you know, in this particular case, like there were a couple instances where I went out and I tried to set Strava KOMs on places where I wasn't sure what I would be able to do. And, you know, I just committed to doing my very best effort, and, you know, some of them I got, some of them I didn't get. For me, that's really good because like if you can practice in training what you want to be doing in racing, it's a great skill to have. And if you're not practicing things in training that are along the lines of what you're going to be doing in racing, you're not going to be as well prepared for racing as you can be. So, you know, for example, if you're going to go out and do, you know, 1 hour time trials in stage races that you do, or like the district championships or the national championships or whatever it is, like if you never go hard for an hour, what are you doing? Like you're totally missing out on the ability to practice enduring a long sustained effort at a high level of discomfort that is exactly the skill you need to excel at doing long sustained efforts. If all you do are 15 or 20 minute threshold efforts, like that's great for your fitness, and that can, if you like go measure it in a lab and you measure your VO2 max, you measure your lactate threshold, you might have similar results, but it's not just the enzymes that are in your legs that get you to the finish line. You also have to have your brain prepared to suffer for an hour in order to do your very best 1 hour effort if it's a time trial that's that long. So it's like, you know, marathon runners go out and they do like 20 to 25 mile really hard tempo runs that are basically like 99% of their goal pace. Like if you look at Eliud Kipchoge, who's the world record holder in the marathon, like he has a very slow and steady progression where his training just kind of like slowly inches towards his like goal event, and his goal event is, you know, maybe setting a world record in the marathon, and it's not really any different than his training. His training is almost exactly the same thing, but he just goes from like 95% to 96% to 98% to 99% in his training, and then on race day he does 100% effort, and it's just that really tiny jump from his training to his racing. And he's practiced basically exactly that, or like some version of it, like multiple times over the last few months leading up to, you know, his 2 hour marathon, or when he set the marathon world record at Berlin a couple of years ago. So like in training, if I want to go out and ride hard up Mount Diablo, but all I ever do is like 3 minute VO2 max intervals and 10 or 15 minute hill climb repeats at, you know, maybe a similar power, I might have great fitness, but I just won't have the mental and cognitive skill of enduring a 1 hour or 45 minute like really intense hard effort. So I find that it's really important to do things that build your confidence and that you really enjoy and that make you feel good about your training, because if you feel defeated every day in training because you're doing things that are like really uncomfortable for you, or really, beyond what you're capable of, or you set the bar too high and you aren't able to achieve things in training that you want to be doing, that's not going to be helpful because it's not going to build your confidence. But on the other hand, you don't want to have training that's like, not challenging enough. So you really need to do a lot of work physically and mentally that's relevant to like practice the skills that you need to do well on race day. You need to focus on doing some workouts, or even most of your workouts, that kind of build your confidence, because you're doing something that's physically demanding in a way that's similar to race day, so you're very practiced at it, and that builds confidence. But also do workouts that you just enjoy and that you feel like you nail it every time. And like be honest with yourself. Don't do workouts that you feel like you're doing a good job, but you're not actually objectively like doing good training. Like there's different ways that could happen, but it's easy to imagine like going out and doing a workout where you feel like you're crushing it, but if you look at your power, like you're actually not. So you want to make sure that it's really challenging and it's really relevant and that it builds your confidence. And then sometimes, maybe once a week, maybe every other week, do something that really challenges you physically, but also mentally, and you really, have a lot of doubts about and aren't sure if you'll be able to do it. And don't pull something random out of a hat. Make sure it's still relevant to the type of event that you're trying to do. But if you can, go into that workout embracing your doubts, but setting them aside, and then attacking that workout with your full mental focus and your best effort, and then you can see what the outcome is, like that will build confidence, because it shows, like, psychologically, like in your conscious awareness and brain, it shows you that you can do things that are challenging and things that you doubt that you can do. But also subconsciously, like below our level of awareness, like it teaches your brain that you can endure a certain type of discomfort, and it practices enduring that type of discomfort. So like, not all of physical performance is like just a matter of what physiology you have plus your like motivation and your psychology. Some of it is just your brain being able to accurately assess what your body is capable of and not shutting you down before you reach your limit. Like, objectively, our brain is always trying to keep us alive, and when we're experiencing physical discomfort, we want our brains try to keep us from doing that too much because it wants to keep us alive. So if you're running a marathon, like obviously it's gonna like slow you down because it doesn't want you to it doesn't want to die. But that comes at a level like kind of below our awareness. But the more you practice, the more your brain will be like, okay, that was really hard. We went up Mount Diablo, we rode hard, and maybe 50 minutes up when you're going hard, you might like feel like you really kind of shut down, and you might physically not feel that different when you're 30 or 40 minutes up, but your brain just hasn't developed the skill to really go deep. So if you go and practice things in training that help your brain to recalibrate what level of discomfort it can safely tolerate, you'll be able to better tolerate that kind of stress in the future. So I think that's like really a key thing. And it's harder to measure, so it's not necessarily something that there's as much scientific study about, but it is very clear that there's a lot of studies showing that our perception of our performance and our awareness of our performance has a big impact on our ability to perform. So it's definitely not just psychological and like how much you want it. It's definitely not just like the will to do your best effort. Like will and desire is important, but it's not everything. Likewise, going into a lab and getting your VO2 max tested or your lactate threshold tested is maybe a useful way of checking in with like what your body's physically capable of, or appears to be capable of. But even that is really limited in what it can actually predict as far as like race outcomes or your peak performance. So I think if I was going to summarize my whole like psychological approach to training and getting ready for a peak event or a peak performance that you hope to do, obviously plan out and implement good training that's relevant to the outcome that you want to achieve. Make sure that training is challenging, but it's achievable for you. Not that you need to be able to achieve every single goal along the way, but most of the time you should feel like you're building momentum and you're increasing in skill and getting better prepared. And you can't create a training plan that's like so challenging that you're not able to complete it, or you're not able to like build confidence because you're growing and getting better and moving forward. You don't want to wear yourself out physically, obviously, by like way overreaching, but you also don't want to wear yourself out mentally. So make sure your training is good, make sure it's relevant to the outcome that you want, derive a lot of confidence from that, like a physical innate knowledge that you can do what you're capable of doing because you've done it in training. And then focus much of your time and energy on workouts that are, challenging, but that build your confidence and that you feel good about those workouts and you love doing them because they're challenging, but you can nail them. And then definitely pick out some workouts every week or two maybe, but not more than that are really challenging and you're not sure you can do them and you have a lot of doubts about, but you go into it and you're totally committed to, enduring that discomfort, both mentally and physically, and trying to perform your best at those workouts. And in doing that, like in facing the things that we find challenging and in facing the things that we're not sure we can do, and then showing that we can do them, like showing ourselves that we can do it, that will build a lot of resilience and a lot of confidence that we can do what we want to be doing at the end of that process of like building up for and then doing whatever your goal event is. And if you do those things, if you have good training and you're not waffling your way out of doing what you know that you need to be doing, or what you're capable of doing, like obviously we have time constraints, but like with the resources that you have, do your best to train and prepare as well as you can. And then once you've done that, focus on doing your best effort on race day, and whatever that is, it's going to be fine. Whether you achieve something that you are like surprised that you were able to do as much as you could, or you just did like exactly what you thought you could, or like me, you got hurt, your training was interrupted, there's not much I could do about that. I got a little bit sick, and even now, like 4 days after the challenge, I'm still a little bit congested, and it's like really annoying to me, but it is what it is. I can't I can't get upset over things like that. I mean, I can, but it's not helpful. But anyway, derive a lot of confidence from your training, challenge yourself, and then just lay it out there on race day. And as long as you do that, you won't have any regrets about your performance. If you, set a world record, or you set a PR, or you fail to meet your goal, that's fine. It is obviously okay to feel, emotionally let down if you don't meet your goal. Like I definitely have not been happy about the fact that I wasn't able to ride as fast as I know that I can at the Diablo challenge. But at the same time, I can, in some cases, it's just something that's beyond our control. I got doored and I got sick, and I can't really help that. But if there wasn't any of those interruptions and I wasn't able to meet my goal, I can look back at my experience and my preparation and my headspace going into the event and see if there's things that I can learn from that about myself or about my body or about my training. And that way, if I can pick out lessons and take those into the future, I'll be able to do the whole process better in the future. And, if I succeed, I can try to identify the things that work well and try to replicate those. If I fail, I can try to identify what worked well, what really didn't work well, or what was holding me back, and then try to adjust those things. Because sometimes the difference between winning and losing, setting PR and not, sometimes it's just 10% of what you're doing could just be adjusted a little bit and you can get the result that you want. But sometimes though, if you don't look for the lessons that you could learn from your experience, then you miss out on a big opportunity to keep getting better. And it doesn't matter whether you win or lose in that sense. The only thing that matters is that you keep learning and you keep refining your process so that you keep getting better and getting better results down the line. And that's definitely something that I've really enjoyed over the years, and something that I try to offer to my clients and then offer to you as a member of my audience that's interested in whatever nonsensical things I have to say. But I really hope that some of my experiences can benefit you, and some of the things that I have to say might give you a new perspective on something that can help you get more out of your training or more out of other activities. Because a lot of the things that I've experienced and done as an athlete, trying to perform at a very high level, have it's the same principles that apply to a lot of other activities. Like if you want to be a good business person or a good teacher or a good parent, a lot of it is just practicing what is relevant to that activity, learning how to do it well, trying to learn from the experience of others, trying to learn from your own experiences in your own context, and trying to just keep refining that process so that you can keep becoming more skilled and keep getting better at whatever it is that you want to be doing, whether it's artistic or relational or physical performance or otherwise. So I've had I just happen to be born, I guess, with a certain body and a certain interest in doing endurance sports, and I've done very well at it. But I recognize that the things that I've learned and have done in endurance sports also are relevant to other areas of my life, and I'm sure it's the same for you. But anyway, I think that's it for this video. If you got to the end of this and you really like longer content like this, please let me know, because I'm really trying to see what's gonna be the most beneficial to you, and whether you like, kind of more short and to the point, like 5-minute videos or 10-minute videos, or if you really like longer content that has maybe a more in-depth look at a certain topic. But anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.